Today is a very special day in that I finally get to put a significant amount of rounds through this, more than we did last time, and I'm pretty excited. Completed this build after a year, but during an ammo crisis. So we haven't been able to really get a feel for it. So we're just going to pop off a few rounds. It is just so much fun to shoot. Like, this is a beautiful gun, and I am so grateful for Graham and his patience in helping me put it together. But it begs the question in that we built our rifles, a very similar thing here is what it all started as. But Graham had a hell of a time with his, and I am really curious to hear why that happened. I've heard a little bit about it, but I don't retain it. So we thought out here on the range would be the best way to do that, so that he can explain it to me and you on why he had a challenge and mine does not.
Well, that's because this rifle's impossible, at least according to the internet. I intentionally built this rifle to push the limits of conventional wisdom as far as what an AR needs to be able to operate and function properly. And because of that, the 300 or so thousand people that commented on my initial "why doesn't this run" had all kinds of ideas, and I thought we'd address them because there were no less than 7 major fatal flaws that prevent this thing from running. But actually it runs. Starting at the front, we've got an 18-inch barrel running rifle length gas. That provides very little dwell time. That's as far as time of gas entering the gas block and the bullet still being in the barrel, providing some pressure to cycle the gun. People say this is impossible, can't be done. Funny, however, that there are manufacturers making barrels that are 18 inches with rifle gas. Next up, we've got the gas block. People said, oh, that's a goofy gas block. You shouldn't run an adjustable gas block on this system because it's somehow going to pull less gas, even if it was all the way open, than a regular gas block. They also said, oh, well, you don't have a good seal because it's fluted up here. Moving further back, in our receiver, we have, well, a skeletonized receiver, as you saw. People said, oh, well, that's releasing too much gas pressure so the gun can't run. This lightweight bolt carrier is aluminum. The bolt's still steel, but we've got an aluminum carrier, so it's got next to no mass to it. They said, oh, there's not enough mass, that's why it's not going to run. We have a carbine length buffer tube with rifle length gas. They said, no, the buffer tube has to be matched to the gas length, otherwise it's not going to run. And it gets even worse. Let me pop this thing open and I'll show you inside reasons why this gun is internet impossible. All right, had to go off camera to get it apart. These Lantac pins I've had lots of issues with, and yeah, it popped out again, so the rest of the video is going to have to be without that in there. But what I wanted to get to show further reasons of how this gun is impossible, you might notice there is no buffer retainer pin. That's because this receiver set has a threaded in buffer retainer pin that uses a tiny, tiny, fragile Allen key, and I knew I'd want to be able to adjust the system. That's why I have an adjustable buffer. This one's from Odinworks. It's their light buffer, and it's empty. So empty, lightweight, adjustable buffer, no pin in there. With the thread in, I'd have to thread it all the way out just to get to the buffer, thread it all the way back in just to shoot again. That was gonna be a pain in the butt. On Tia's, we knew we weren't adjusting it, so we left it. But yeah, so no buffer retainer pin, lightweight empty buffer. These are all reasons that make this gun impossible. Let's see though, does it shoot and how does it shoot? All right, so you saw all the reasons why this rifle is impossible. We have some almost 30-year-old military surplus 62 grain 5.56. Let's see how it runs or doesn't. pretty smooth, and it appears that my brass is kicking to about the 2 o'clock-ish. Maybe I can choke it. No, it just keeps running. Maybe it won't lock open. Very consistent ejection on that 30-year-old ammo, and the bolt lock to the rear. The impossible has been accomplished. Let's get back to the bench, and I'll show you why those theories, though possibly right at one point, don't necessarily apply to the modern AR-15. So first things first, back to the muzzle where we started. Yes, this is very little dwell time, rifle length gas on an 18-inch barrel, but it can be done, as you've seen. In fact, it has been done so many times that common barrel makers, this is an Aero Precision barrel, do make this offering. You just have to be aware of how much gas or how little gas you're going to have. Now, you did see it running with 5.56. We've shown another video where it runs on 223 with less pressure. I just have to click this gas block one click. Moving on to the gas block. The concerns that because this front leg is wrapping around the fluting, there wouldn't be enough gas flow, kind of unfounded. And it's just simple thought, guys. There's one intake for a gas block. Yeah, this one's long and it has a second clamping spot, but it's longer because it's adjustable. That single intake for the gas block is right here. So it doesn't matter if there's seal up here. This is just here to help stabilize and hold on to it. This is where it needs to be tight, and that is a solid, unfluted piece of barrel. Moving back into the reciprocating mass. So this silly light aluminum carrier is very light. I mean, it's aluminum instead of steel, and as you can see clearly through the windows there, there's just less of it to begin with. That means there's less momentum pushing forward to pick up the next round, something you have to take precautions of, but there's a way to mitigate that in your buffer and spring, which we'll get to. As far as this open receiver not holding the pressure to allow it to cycle, the receiver doesn't do that. That's not the receiver's job. All of that gas pressure through your gas tube into the gas key, down into the carrier where it pushes on the tail end of the bolt. That's why when you clean your AR, that boat tail is always so dirty. And then vents out of these holes in the side of the carrier. So there's no actual gas seal necessary in the upper receiver. All that work's done in the bolt. So it doesn't matter if you've got holes in your receiver. Moving back to the lack of a buffer pin retaining pin, people told me that that was going to prevent the gun from working because the carrier or the buffer was going to hit the back of the trigger while the rifle cycled. And as you can see, if you weren't already familiar, the bolt doesn't go any farther forward than right here, which means the tail end of the carrier doesn't go any farther forward than the back end of your receiver. If you pop open any AR-15, you're going to see the back end of your carrier right there at the edge of the receiver. It can't physically go farther forward, so there's no need, no concern about retaining that buffer. Why is there one then in military rifles? Well, it simplifies things. If you have to field strip your rifle in the field, you don't want stuff springing everywhere. It also means that taking the rifle apart is a little more complicated without it, easier with it, because you don't have to worry about stuff shooting forward. But there's no need for retention. Then when we get to that lightweight adjustable buffer that's empty in mine, and this carbine length buffer tube rather than a rifle length to match the gas system, that all comes into changing the spring. And the spring was my original only problem in getting this gun running. I had a spring that I think maybe was mislabeled from the factory. It seemed really stiff, and many of you saw that in the video and commented on that. But rather than just find another carbine spring, I went to a reduced power spring, and that solved the issues. Because we have a weaker spring back here and an empty buffer, it takes less to get this moving to the rear. That combined with the lightweight carrier. The only concern then is it going to come forward enough with enough energy to strip around off of the magazine That's where quality magazine choice comes in. I use Duramags, they're my preferred. Very smooth, very nicely designed mags. The follower flows nicely within them, better than it does in polymer, because, well, aluminum and steel is smoother than polymer. It's just the way it is. And until they make a hard plastic magazine, which of course would be brittle and risk breaking, your metal mags are going to run better. So by running metal mags, I don't have any issues. I hope this has been educational for you all. It was a fun journey, intentionally building a gun that was going to test the limits and go against. The only thing I had heard, my only concern with this was 18-inch barrel rifle gas might be a little tricky. The other 6 or 7 points came from you all, the audience. There were some people that might have been a little malicious with it. I think most of you were simply repeating what you had been told, and I don't blame you for that. Unless you've had the opportunity to experiment like this, if you're told something and you don't know otherwise, there's no reason to disbelieve it. But I hope this rifle build has opened your eyes a bit to just how versatile the modern AR is. Remember, rifling rates have changed, gas systems have changed, overall mass. There's very little in common with this to the AR601 we have at home, which we've shown you in videos, the original AR. A lot of things have changed. The system is essentially the same, but with modern technology, modern ammunition, and modern machining, you can get a lot smoother than the standard AR. Tia's build, believe it or not, is smoother than this one, and look for her gun in another video to learn more about how awesome that build came out without any of the hassle that I had to go through with this, and certainly without having to worry which click your gas block is on if you're running 223 or 556. Thanks for watching.